people look at, because they are looking at short-term numbers and sales, and then move on to the next role, wherever in India or abroad. So that's unfortunate part of corporate life. But I think it's important that whatever you do is that you take a view of a 360-degree approach. How do I engage a consumer and drive consumption and change long-term behavior? And yes, as long as you looking at that and CPRP, I mean, for example, television today is the most cost-effective medium. It still has the largest reach, and in fact, I was recently reading even in US and all that ultimately, in terms of consumption, they still will look at some of the television. This one, you still get a certain cost-effective reach. So that is going to happen. But at the same time, you need to look at just not CPRP and CPT, but look at holistically.
Can I sort of rebut that? It's come up before also, and it's a general observation that the reason why CPRP or CPT becomes the de facto measure is because it's the only thing that can be measured, and therefore you're managing what you're measuring, so you're coming down on price. Whenever we come out with marketing analytics, there seems to be a divided house on that. There are some people who are avowed believers, and it obviously requires the conviction on the client side to drive it, and if they see the marketing analytics working, marketing ROI kind of stuff, they actually champion it and even use it as a decision-making tool. There are others who do lip service to it and say it makes sense, but they never get around embracing it. What is it that you would like to give as a brief to agencies to go for effectiveness metrics other than just this efficiency price one?
See, I completely agree with you. I mean, at the end of the day, the comfort in CPT and CPRP is ultimately it can be measured. At the end of the day, if you really look at it, in any company, and I'm talking about companies who are steady companies and not about sometimes high growth companies might get a lot of funding and start advertising. That's not I'm talking of steady growth category, I mean, in categories which are here to stay. Now they spend a significant portion of their marketing, I mean, in A&P to sales can be anything between 8 to 15%. Now that part of the money is the least accountable of all the other spends in the company, whether it's buying of raw materials, buying of anything else. There are scientific this one to track and audit everything. Unfortunately, in terms of in the marketing spend, accountability is low because there is a lot of gut intuition and all those things are there. But yes, if analytics is there in a big way, analytics, in fact, if you ask me, and sometimes I want to drive analytics in my marketing team here, because at the end of the day, there has to be a input-output ratio, not just, and that's why I talked about long-term brand equity measures. If analytics is something which gets developed, I'm sure people will look beyond just the CPT and CPRP, because CPRP and CPT gives you the instant comfort that yes, that is the only measure of my buying efficiency today. But as long as ultimately, and that will also force people, see the other thing that happens in a growth market is abundance of marketing monies doesn't, and when he talked about the lazy marketing, lazy marketing is induced when you have an abundance mindset. Whenever there's constraints, you are forced to innovate. And if you really look at the biggest innovations have come during times of war, because you are forced to. So therefore, I think what will happen is this: once certain categories mature, and this A&P is no longer something is just in an abundance set, that people will be forced to look at analytics and look at long-term measures just rather than just a CPT. It's just a safety cause, right?
Yes, of course. You're itching, I can see.
No. I think this is giving me a segue into that marketing as an investment rather than a cost. What my observation has been is that yes, default option, if you go to media managers or even brand managers or something like that, media managers with a procurement mindset will come into CPRP, CPT, it gives them a measure, that's how all of us can become heroes in that organization by saying we've got savings, and it's obviously a big deal. It's money that we're talking about. The effectiveness part and when it starts becoming an investment, the few observations that one has had has been, one of course has been where marketing analytics has been embraced. That's when you actually come back and say, in certain markets, you can actually reduce your media levels and take up your distribution or whatever, and you can actually start explaining the marketing mix elements. That's one part of it. The second one is sometimes when the management of the client end, and I've seen this happening mostly with entrepreneurial ones. I'll take an example. There's a client of ours called Havels, and we introduced them to cricket. Now cricket is a premium buy. Now at that point in time, if you had to go by the hardcore, and by the way, entrepreneur or a person who's got his own money looks at it much more with much more sort of accountability than overall professional managers. But at that point in time, in this particular case, they were able to use their judgment. But we made an analytical case, and it was a judgment override which said that somewhere along the line, impact property like cricket will give their brand the stature and the reach in the TG, which matters as far as they're concerned. And they found it in their own intuitive sort of industrialist mindset value. And they were clearly viewing it as investment. They understood that the trade-off there was we are sacrificing 6 weeks of advertising for every 1 week that we do here or 2 weeks that we do here, but they thought that the investment was worth it. Point I'm making is basically one. This has to be driven from the top. So it will only be CEOs who will drive cost to investment, whether you're using analytics or whether you're using judgment. How do we catalyze it is our issue.
Vikram, I'll ask you a counter question, not directly related to this, but the point that you made earlier that we've got to look at digital 360 degrees, more things, etc. Everybody's been talking about it. Now, large companies like yourself, for example, you're possibly accountable for 50% of the media spend or something like that in this industry. Despite all of us knowing that, talking about it, why is it that still about 82% of the monies is still going into what we call as traditional media? So if we're all open, we're all understanding this, we're all knowing digital activation, rural as Raj put it, we're talking about different measures rather than this, why is it then we're not being able to push the needle significantly?
I think inertia is the biggest, and related to that is the same yardsticks of accountability are not being put onto conventional media like TV and print as they are for relatively smaller media like digital or even activation. We are asked to explain what the cost of the tire on the rubber of the truck that is going to be doing an activation is going to be, but the same accountability is not asked for a spot. But in all of this, somewhere along the line, it is coming down to, I think, a lack of an apples to apples comparison if you have to come out with an integrated plan. Today, if you have to buy, we talk integrated plans, but we're actually making multimedia plans. So you have a TV plan which has got 4+ reach at 40, so many GRPs. I've got a print plan which has got 3 inserts across so many publications, and that's so 3 rounds of that. I've got a radio plan that goes on for 15 days, 4 spots in the morning, 4 spots in the evening across so many stations. I have an outdoor plan which has got so many hoardings. This is the way we make our plans. Now, if we have to come out with a plan which actually says, in the city of Bombay, end of day, I need integrated 60% reach at 3+ or whatever, and I need a total of so many gross impressions, and I'm going to get so many from them from TV, so many from them from print, so many of them from multiplexes, so many of them from what have you, the search, all the rest of it. You've got yourself a true integrated plan. So you need an apples to apples, which is where I actually feel that the entire using CPT actually gives you the base. In fact, all markets do that. Everybody talks impressions, everybody talks audiences. We are the only weird market which for some reason talks, in some place where you talk numbers, in some place we talk percentages, some place we just talk secondage. It's ludicrous. We need to have a simple apples to apples thing which allows integrated media to do and it will fly. I can guarantee you that.
What I'm hearing is Vikram wants to do a lot of things. He wants to give us judgment money, impact buy. It's the clients who are not allowing him to do that.
You want to respond to that?
And the second
Sugata?
thing which I want to ask you, Sugata, is you said something in your thing saying, give a common brief. Do you give a common brief to your media agency and your creative agency?
I think some of the, as far as I know, as far as I'm told, at least the process has started. So some of the key objectives in terms of say either a new initiative or some of the initiatives, there's a common brief is given. I think, as I said, there are 2 or 3 issues which what I perceive is, one is that at the end of the day, in terms of first is the media owner or the media provider having a 360 degrees solution within its books, within the bookcases. For example, if a provider has...
I'll tell you my experience, sorry to butt in. there have been many occasions, and I'm saying today, it is so easy for a channel, okay, if you give us your objective, we can view the story to go with what you want to achieve, because end of the day we are addressing the same target audience. Say, for example, consumption of sanitary napkins. Okay, you want to get it high. In different stories, you can weave it in such a way. The problem is everybody wants to see upfront the brand. It's a question of how you do it subtly, how we do it cleverly. And like you said, you put that thing in some Bengali newspaper and it got your sales up by X percentage. There are ways of doing it on television as well. But the problem is everybody likes to sit in forums and talk, and I'm no offense meant. But when you actually sit with clients saying, let's do this, there's a big idea, let's do it, nobody wants to do it. End of the day, everybody wants to boil down to how many seconds of mention did I get, or how many seconds, and then you start valuing it. I'm not saying, but I'm saying, like Vikram said, I think there's this inertia of not wanting to take risks. It's lazy advertising. Okay, it's working for me. And more importantly, I think the real truth is in the fact there is no media brand custodian. Because 2 years down the line, the person moves out, so he doesn't give a shit about the brand. And quarter to quarter, he has to deliver results. So he's looking at his P&L from that point of view. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think some factors are, these are truths which one has to, contend with. But I think increasingly, I think there is openness, and if you see a lot of mature marketers have started this. That process of how do you solve a marketing problem? I think, for example, if you had to, instead of saying that I want to just launch a brand, I want to drive trials. In fact, we have given that, I think that common brief to saying how do you drive trials, or how do you, if a brand has a mature brand has a purpose. For example, a Saffola has a purpose of reducing the heart, this one is a statistic. I think I will give you one example, and it's not our brand, but I think the entire NDTV, Toyota, that to me is, I would expect that was more a brief, it was not a brief for media buying, but a brief for something over the brand. Or yeah. So I think it's possible, but if you really ask me, I think there is a change in mature marketers, and that's the reason I'm saying there is a difference between mature marketers and people who get a lot of, so sometimes marketing money is spent just because, you have the money, because today there is a lot of hot money, IPOs, or in terms of, private equity funding. But I think the change is happening in people in mature marketers, and it happens when, I think, in terms of in markets or categories, where the category is getting a little mature and competition is increasing. So in a very high growth phase, what happens is that people have all the money, and there is this one that these things might not happen. But I think as categories mature and the competitive intensity increases, this is bound to happen amongst companies who have mature marketing teams. And I see it happening, and I've seen it started happening. And even in FMCG, I see at least 1 or 2 players have started this process. In telecom, is another place, auto, 1 or 2 places. I've seen this, I think this is happening.
I'll just give an example. In the US, the Olive Oil Federation pays one food channel 80 or 180, I don't know the exact figure, $1 million. The federation pays to propagate the use of olive oil.
Raj, that's a very interesting point, and it's always nice to put the client on the dock, but maybe this is slightly provocative, but to ask you as a representative of media, so not aimed at colors or you as an individual, but at the same time, why doesn't media also then take a little bit of accountability? It's every conversation with media, why does it end up being, okay, you've got to pay this much and you will get that much, but there is no accountability at the end of it that if you have paid this much, I guarantee you that I will deliver that much, right? So, in general, will media, you think, be more willing to take accountability on actual delivery going forward?
I think so. I think even today they take accountability. It's a perception in your mind that there's no accountability. There is accountability. You think Mr. Sakuja will be spending money on our channel if there's no accountability? The thing is, there are a lot of reality, because he's accountable to his clients. It means that the client will be giving him money without accountability. Everybody, there is accountability. I think it's a question of, if you want to do things beyond the realm of regular thing that you're doing. If there's no account